I looked up all the notes in my other version of this one. So, but you must have that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Really?
Well.
Thank you. All right, well, welcome everybody to this June 11th, 2025 regular school board meeting. We will stand and say the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Writing about garbage hauler. You're going to where to blame her.
Well, welcome everybody that's here. Joe, Adrian. Yeah. Can I please get a motion to adopt the agenda?
I will motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
I.
Okay. Can I please get a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Make a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
And I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Moving on. Review the strategic plan progress. Adrian Samara.
Representing everybody. So this is an opportunity for us just to do a check-in at the beginning of the year. You all worked together with us to set some goals for our strategic plan and the focus areas for that. And so we have some data and progress towards some of the areas. Wanted to share what we've learned so far about progress and kind of what we're thinking about as we're going forward. So we had set some goal areas for each of the commitments. So last year for belonging, we were looking at really focusing on students' opportunities to cultivate connections, and then a commitment to conversations about difficult conversations about race, gender, oppression, and discrimination. Those were areas that had kind of come up as needs. And so these were the goals that we had set for ourselves, and we did this earlier in the year. So just a few pieces of progress wanted to share. So Bryant did share that we do have increase in participation in activities this last year. So I think in his presentation, he shared some things that have been happening. So there, in terms of activities, how kids are engaging, we continue to have a high level of engagement of our students. So I think that is indicative of the sort of things that kids enjoy. The progress indicator on the bottom of the question about difficult conversations about race, gender, and oppression. This is when we saw families and students had an increase. They felt like we were moving positively in that direction, and there was a little bit of a decrease there from staffs and in their responses. So, but we continue to see that as an area where we have growth to do.
Can you identify what building you're seeing those responses from?
They're from different buildings. So I think that in your administrative data, I think, Angie, is that right? You can see the actual surveys themselves. So this is district-wide percentages, but if you go into the actual surveys, you can see like where those answers are for different buildings. So
I think another important piece is we are looking at the CEE data and other perception surveys. A lot of this is perception of either families or students or staff. And different things mean different things to different people. So perception data is only as strong as what we fully understand, everyone understands the prompts to be. So sometimes people look at the prompts in certain ways and we don't always fully know. We have our take on it. So as we continue to work, we also will continue to define the different pieces. So it's something to keep in mind when we do surveys when teachers do surveys with students. It's super personal to the teacher. We also have to say, let's make sure that the prompts are something that we're really honed in on. So
And do we know, and if you're saying we have access to the survey, so we can also see the percentage of the staff who actually participated?
Yeah, and we have really good participation on these surveys across all three groups.
Can I ask one more?
Yeah, absolutely.
When, let's say the students take these,
Mhm.
Is it quiet in the class? Or does someone's, like, do they go through the questions together? So it's, and some of the questions, you know, some people might not understand really fully what the questions mean.
I think it varies. They usually typically are doing them like in their homeroom class at the middle school and the high school, and then the elementaries, they're doing with their teachers and students. The student surveys at the elementary are only the upper grades, it's only fourth and fifth graders. And the questions are a little bit differently worded on a student survey than the adult surveys. So they're a little bit more kid friendly in terms of language. But whether they're actually reading through them or explaining them, I think that's going to be a little bit teacher dependent, I would guess. Question.
Are they like anonymous, like a staff member wouldn't worry about getting reprimanded because they,
Yeah, they're
Okay.
anonymous. We can,
Excellent.
they do have some demographic questions. So like if we were curious to know if there was a certain demographic, there is a way in their structure and their system. They have like a Tableau dashboard where we can go in and kind of dig into like, oh, I wonder if these are our fifth graders, or I wonder if these are teachers who have been here for more than 12 years versus so there's different ways you can kind of look at programs if there's specific questions. And so part of what that does for us, I think, is we'll say, we have this big picture of these data pieces, but that's not going to give us all the answers that we need. So a lot of this is an area where we have some more questions to ask, or this is an area where we want to learn more about. Okay, why are you saying that? What is the thing that we look at here? Is it everybody? Are there certain groups that are saying things that are different? Yeah. So there's some of those there. I think communication, we have a few different pieces that we looked at here. We really were looking at communication and then partnership with families and opportunities for families to really advocate for the needs of their children was where we had set our goals. And again, here's kind of what we were looking for: family participation, students' awareness of their progress. So in looking at where we were at, family perception about communication has increased. So it was positive initially, but it's gotten more positive there. But the one that we see as an area of growth for us is the students' progress. The indicator there where the students are saying, my teachers tell me how I'm doing in their class. And that's something that we're very interested in exploring a little bit more. How are we helping kids to understand what they're learning, how they're learning, and so that they're reflecting. That didn't have the growth that we were hoping for. And then in terms of participation in family conferences, we had really good participation at Irene. We had really good participation at the high school and middle school as well. For family conferences, but the way that they collected data wasn't easy for me to pull into a percentage because they didn't. They took like notes from families, from comments and stuff. So to go in and try to calculate a percentage. So that's something we're going to work on. It's getting a better way to collect how many families are really participating in those opportunities. Okay. And then another thing Lisa and I have been talking about with the team is other participation events that we have that families come. There's things that it's pretty easy when you're coming in and you're sitting down with the conference, you can check off, but it's a little more difficult when you're coming to an event to see. So what are ways that we can get to know who's coming, who's participating, how are families engaged, which families are being engaged. So that's something we think about. Anything additional? Support. this is one where we really are looking a lot about, our goals were around discrepancies in achievement. And so, here, there's really, we don't necessarily have the data yet. So we'll come back in, depending on when the state releases these fully, we'll be able to get and see kind of where we are with these. So we don't have disaggregated data yet for those two measures. But the one that we did have a progress measure around was the staff frequent monitoring of student learning. And so what we're seeing there is that our staff aren't feeling necessarily like they have the support they need in monitoring student learning. And I think later on I'm talking to you about Panorama. That's part of that change, is to have a tool that's better at allowing us to do that. We'll talk a little bit more about that.
Do we have it documented what the class sizes have increased by over the last 2 years in the data we have? So as we're seeing it decrease. I'm saying this as a parent because I actually had a one-on-one with a teacher over this exact topic this week. Yeah. And it's a very large class that has been impacted, and there's just not enough manpower.
We track yes, I mean, we can go in there on a monthly basis. We track the class size overage for the CBA. And so that's fairly easy to track. Some of those increased classes have come in science. And partly because of the CBA, we limited the science class for the secondary to, I believe, 24 students. So there are some teachers who have 25 and 26 and 27 in the science class.
How about mathematics?
Mathematics is just through the CBA. I think that at the high school level is, I believe, 33. And we have 1 or 2 teachers in one class that was consistently at 34. But that answers your question.
So overall, there's still positive responses. But I think in a number of cases, just looking at our staff feeling like we're making improvement or growing in these areas, or is that something we need to be continuing to work on?
I think this piece, and if you can back up to the support piece for a second, there's an element of instructional practice around what are we doing to check for understanding or check for misunderstanding? And there's an aspect of our framework on instructional moves around common formative assessments. And I don't believe you can go into many secondary buildings across the country where they're all aligned with the exact way of grading. And even your own child from classroom to classroom to classroom, it's different. And so students have to navigate different teachers and different styles. A lot of times teachers grade the way that they were taught, and that's how they've done it for 20 years. That's a big one to crack, but that's one that we need to be looking at. And it leads into support. It leads into understanding as a student what it is that you need to work on. It also helps teachers understand what you need to teach or reteach. And it does work too on helping them understand what kind of supports they need to provide. So that's an area that as we continue to grow our admin staff, that we're also going to be working towards. So it'll be a focus for us.
And that is part of like the work that the principals did this year across the county, where they were going in and observing some of that was about
And engagement language, what kind of prompts do you give teachers to ask them to consider all the kids in the room and what they're working on? So,
and part of what this also does for us is helps us to think like those waiver days that we have where we kind of professional. You know, we're not seeing the growth that we would like to see from staff feeling like they have the skills to do this. That helps us to know, okay, well, let's spend a little bit more time in those waiver days. Maybe we have some professional assessment, or we're going to meet again our PLC teams. So we have our high school, middle school are both sending the teams and the principals to the PLC conference to kind of learn. They haven't had a chance to go with our new administrators, and that's really about monitoring student learning. So that's an opportunity to build their skills there, and they're really excited about having some of their teachers come as well. So I think there's a number of things there that can keep us moving. For wellness, we were looking at attendance rates. social emotional learning and behavior expectations and bullying. And so some of the indicators that we have right here, we do have an increase in regular attendance that we've seen. So year to date, at the point that I pulled this, was at 78.8%, and then we'll be able to have our final after tomorrow. We'll know what the actual rate is for this whole fiscal year because we'll have finished it. But that has been an increase. I will say that that's an overall increase, but one thing that our principals have all noticed is that different groups of students have different rates of attendance. So there are certain grade levels that might have a lower attendance rate. There are demographics that have lower attendance rates. So we do have, you'll see school improvement plans in August. When we come and present those, you'll notice that the principals have identified, a number of them have identified attendance in one way or another as something to continue working on, even though overall the numbers are pretty strong. There are definitely some kids in some groups that we want to keep targeting. Staff feel like we've spent a lot of time, especially at our secondary schools, the counselors spend time with looking at some different supports for teachers in social emotional lessons and learning. And I think that that's reflected here. And so they are having more support around that.
So Adrian, I'm just looking at this, excuse me, the CEE stuff, and everything's created on 3/12/2025. In August, we'll see the updated.
For the CEE data?
Yeah.
CEE we do once a year in March.
Okay, so next March, we'll see.
Yes. Yeah. So when we actually have, this is our third year, so we have historical data. And I think in some of the documents, if you wanted to look, and I'm happy to share if you have specific questions about CEE, that there's one that's a district-wide one that shows growth.
The tool,
Yeah. And so that's kind of, I would say, start with that one, because you can see in that, and what's really interesting is like, what are the top 5 like positive responses, or the top 5? Like some of those are pretty interesting to look at.
The I-they
well.
gap as well.
Mhm.
You've heard Tyler talk about the I-they gap. This is how I feel, and this is how my colleagues feel. That's it. So what you're seeing is just everything that Adrian's pulled together to package that's in our, but what you have in the administrative is all the raw reports.
Yeah, and there's a lot of information in those, so they're very rich surveys. There's a lot in there.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just,
and we actually had the CE folks come and work with our principals for a day to help us kind of dig in. And they did share there weren't areas that they saw that they really felt were concerning in a lot of these.
Up and down, I mean, you're looking at 2, 3, 4 percentage points. They're not huge swings. So that was one of the pieces that they talked about.
yeah, I'm just looking
Still
at the
areas
middle
for us to
school.
pay attention. Yeah.
Starting in.
There's a couple of the staff ones in middle school, like we will watch, so you'll see like different buildings.
Yeah, middle school one, there was just some, negative responses as far as like support and how they feel about recognition, and I know we try to do better with all that this year, so when I saw that date, I was just wondering.
When you get the update. Yeah.
So we hope, obviously next year, but hopefully be much better.
And this is one measure, and I think another thing that we have been working on in general, and at least it's been helping a lot with, this communication overall and getting more feedback more often. So smaller surveys about finite questions, what's happening there, or the listening sessions we've had with students and families. Those have been really powerful, good ways to get more detailed information about why these things might look the way that they do on this bigger once a year survey. I think more of those things as well. Next year I'll give us more information.
Well, it's good.
For learning, we had goals around overall academic achievement, relevance for learning and opportunities for students to work toward their career and life goals. And so we do have preliminary Smarter Balanced assessment results, but these aren't finalized, but these are just preliminary results for most of our students. And so overall, we had pretty nice increase. So level 3 or 4 on the SBA is not standard. So overall in the district, for ELA, we had an 8% increase in kids on standard. And for math, a 6% increase for students on standard. So in those preliminary scores, so once those get finalized, we'll be able to dig in and get a little bit more detail with us, just an overall look at what we're doing. So there's some pretty nice growth in a lot of the academic areas for this year.
Most guys said when they're finalized, they can't go down. They just keep going.
That's what they've said in the past. Yeah, they like, so if a student has a 3, they're not gonna come back and go, oh, no, actually it was a 1, that's what they typically said. So these should not go. Most of it, I think, feel very, but there's some nice growth in areas where we're focusing there. Future orientation was also another one that there was an increase with students on, and then I think that is one that next year I'm really excited about some of the things that we're doing. So that the limitless work, I think that you're aware of, that we've been engaged with, I think that is gonna become more live in all of the buildings. Some of the other pieces are happening. I don't know if you want to share anything about those pieces.
I think you know that we're working on a 21st century grant. There's a girls club and there's an element there that's gonna be elementary and middle, so that'll be an area as well. So
And then there's a new statewide high school and beyond plan that it's got some really much better tools for kids to be doing things like their job surveys and their, what am I interested in, and that kind of thing. So I think some of that's gonna continue to help us. Ninth grade on track continues to be a growth area there. And then dropout rates, I think they're a little bit of a difficult indicator for a couple of reasons. It's a really small number of students, so 1 student is a big jump in that. And I think also we've been working with the partnership, but it's like, so this wouldn't include like open doors from this year, right? So those students this is last year's dropout rate. So it'll be interesting to see as we get to the end of this year, with some of that work that we've been doing to connect more with the impact program, to have open doors, some of those as other options. Yes, but this is an area I think that we as a district need to learn, like we recognize we want to learn a little bit more. So if it's a fairly small number of students who are dropping out, they're leaving us, but what is exactly going on with those students? Why does that happen?
it's an area of emphasis. When we have students go to impact, we typically don't have a system in place to know where they're at and whether they're engaging. And we don't get notified if they don't engage. So we're working on that. With ETC, you'll see, it was in the consent agenda today, moving forward, because there are placements for students that impact can be good for. They've got a trajectory where they could end up going and getting their engaged. What we're seeing is that they're not continuing engagement. So that's where the open doors comes in. And you'll hear some stuff, comments about the open doors that we've got from some of our students that have shifted into the open doors program. Been really successful. The other thing I'd share on the 9th grade on track, it's a metric, but with the 9th grade success program, Sean is moving to apply those standards to the 9th and 10th, 11th grade and get away from just having a 9th grade success, but broaden it out. And that's always been the plan. So they did a nice job implementing in the 9th grade, but have seen last few years that when you go from 9th to 10th, it's a drop because you don't have the consistency across all the staff. So they're putting some of those practices.
But considering we're at the end of the school year, we should know how many dropped out this year, even though we don't have.
Yeah, I have that number, how that percentage is calculated, because that percentage is calculated through OSP.
So a couple pieces on there. If a student engages, so on time is a factor in determining whether they're a dropout or a graduate. So used to be on time was 4 years. Now I think they're shifting it to 5 years. So that's a factor. The other piece is until we have transcripts to know that students have graduated, we don't have that data. And so we won't get that back from ETC for a few weeks, I don't think. And even they just had the open doors graduation last night. So they end when their students, wherever their home high school is, ends. So like the last day for fire science and welding for NCTA and MERIDIAN is today. Should have been tomorrow, but they didn't realize we shifted it because of the snow day, but they end depending on where the students are. So there's a lot of different factors. Typically, it's not until later in the summer that
I'm assuming by what you just said, something, so correct me, but, so let's say somebody leaves our campus and they decide to not attend, but they decide to go to BTC and they graduate from BTC, that still counts to us as a graduate? Like, when you say dropout, they dropped out from Meridian.
So a dropout is if they don't graduate. Okay, so if they go to a different system and graduate, then they are known as a graduate.
Okay.
And they don't count against us as a dropout.
Okay.
They show their graduation for another system.
Okay.
Okay. But if we have a student that goes and then continues to spin their wheels, the last place they attended before they receive another graduation certificate is considered, if they surpassed the 5-year mark, I believe, then they are.
So we won't know true data on this year's graduating classes for 2026, because they'll have
I'll have to-
2027.
You have to
They'll have a
double check
whole other
because
year.
we also have the ability for students to stay engaged with K-12 until the end of their 21st or 22 now.
22.
It's
Once
20
when they turn 22.
But that's with
But
those
it's-
special
Because
considerations,
still
that's
gotta-
not, yeah.
Isn't that for services though?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so, but that's why Open Doors it's not ALE, it's re-engagement. And so these are students who have stopped and are not on track. So our partnership with NCTA has been really successful, which you're gonna read in a comment, and so it's in there. But the other part of that is establishing that up here when we establish the skill center.
And overall, it is a small number of students, but we know what's happening with the students and why.
Well, that's why I'm curious with today's economy, will we see that increase as students have to go earn a living to support?
We're also gonna get lots of options. Yeah, so there's that too, but yeah.
Yeah, but overall, I think here, in terms of learning, it's fairly good. Any other questions? That was just a little.
I like seeing the measurable goals and the outcomes. So thank you for adding that. I think that's what we were asking for.
Yeah, and I think
quite
that's
some time, so thank you.
team effort. You all helped us set those goals, and I believe that you'll work with that on your board retreat when that kind of.
That's- When we talk about goals for next year, that's part of our agenda on the 13th. And then also, we'll come back to talk panorama. We're using tools right now that don't give us as clear a picture as we think panorama will. And so that'll help us too. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be back up here in just a second.
Very much.
Yes.
We do have some public comment, but Lynette is having some back issues.
She's had some health difficulties, so she's not able to make it up tonight. But she typically will come up and share this. Lynette Brower, Director Brower.
I am going to read her email. So, dear Dr. Everett and members of the Meridian School District Board of Directors, on behalf of the Northwest Career and Technical Academy and the NCTA Open Doors Program, I want to extend my deepest gratitude for your ongoing partnership and steadfast commitment to the students and family we collectively serve. Last night, we had the privilege of celebrating our NCTA Open Doors graduation with over 20 students participating from both the Mount Vernon and Meridian sites. Of particular note, 6 Meridian students from our Open Doors at Whatcom County program crossed the stage, meeting the requirements to earn their diplomas, including the student who completed graduation requirements last winter. Meridian has seen 7 Open Door students successfully achieve their diplomas this year. I also am pleased to share that 1 additional Meridian student remains engaged with clear educational plan, and most importantly, the determination to complete his high school journey over the summer and next fall. The success of these students is a direct reflection of Meridian School District's unwavering dedication to ensure that each and every learner is empowered to thrive academically, socially, and emotionally. They're fully aligned with your district vision. The opportunity for Meridian students to access NCTA open doors would not exist without your leadership and your board's willingness to provide innovative partnerships that honor your commitments to belonging, communication, learning, support, and wellness. You have provided these students a place where they feel valued, heard, and represented, where everyone sees themselves represented in their educational environment. Through proactive collaboration, we have fostered open communication that keeps students and families informed, engaged, and empowered. Your commitment to equitable education has given these learners access to academic pathways designed to meet their unique needs and life goals. You've allowed each student to create their narrative to recognize each learner's story, helping them navigate obstacles with individual plans. And perhaps most importantly, your partnership reflects Meridian's deep commitment to wellness, ensuring students feel physically, emotionally, and academically safe as they pursue their futures. Thank you for believing in these students and fostering and trusting the shared vision that allows them to re-engage, rediscover their potential, and ultimately cross the stage as proud graduates. Your board's courageous decision to participate fully in the NCTA Open Doors program has truly changed lives, not only for the graduates we celebrated last night, but for many future learners who will follow. With sincere appreciation, Annette Brower, Director, Northwest Career Technical Academy.
Very cool.
Pretty outstanding. I had 22 graduates from 9 different districts. They celebrated, so.
Very cool. Send it to Martin. That's right.
Well, that's 6 other students that walked across the stage.
Yeah, and the gentleman that is gonna finish in the fall was too far, it wasn't possible for him to finish this time, but that's also a piece around the engagement. Kind of have to let that 4-year timeline lapse and think about what you need. How do we get you there? It's good.
Very cool. Yeah, well, there's no more public comment that I have to read, thankfully. So we'll,
You did a great job.
we move on to some new business
It wasn't monotone.
at all. You want more excitement? We can do it again. Yeah. All right, first review 2025-26 Meridian School District School Board Plan and Board Calendar.
I don't know if there is anything to share. It's much what you're used to in terms of the plan of work. We have made some shifts and adjustments. For instance, some of the SBA data coming to us late spring, we're moving into the fall. We will give you those reports so we can make sure we have it at that time to be able to put that together. But this just, we continue to refine it with Angie and I looking at when things are happening and what's going on. Determining a new board chair, elections, all that stuff is built in. So it's a first reading. If you have anything that jumps out at you, then adjust if we need to.
Any questions? I have my calendar after next week.
I've gone through it a few times, but it all just kind of depends on. I'm a senior mom, so
It's hard to know this far out.
volleyball will be my priority. I apologize. Yeah, just Wednesdays, yeah, just,
Say Brian, schedule them on Tuesdays, Thursdays.
most of them are, it's the big home games and everything are.
Okay. Well. First review curriculum material proposals. Back with Adrian Summer.
Sure. Would you like to see the master calendar?
So 2 curriculum proposals. Food science high school and then middle school elective. Just a reminder, 2020 is the board policy that talks about how we select core instructional materials. So we'll have a task force of teacher experts in the area would identify the materials. They will propose that to our instructional materials committee, and that's a committee of folks from across the district as well as some family or community members. Then they review the work of that committee, make sure that it aligns with the board policy requirements, and then they make a recommendation to bring that to you and then final approval. And the core material criteria, and so the documents that I shared with you are talking about these different criteria. And I'm not gonna read those all out to you, but these are the criteria that we looked at. So I think a lot of these have to do with the flexibility to meet the needs of the students. There's quite a few that have different ones of saying that. And then to line up with our standards. They're kind of the big groups that the teams are looking at. So we have two proposed materials. So the first is for principles of food science, and this is actually our currently adopted text. So what we're asking for here is just to update it to the most recent version. So
Using Project Lead the Way currently.
Project Lead the Way, right now they are, yeah, they've been using it in, that's the other one. This is food science.
Oh, that's a Project Lead the Way. For food sciences as well.
Oh, yeah, food science is high school. It's a high school science and CTE course. It's high school.
And when you said that you have the subject matter experts, I'm assuming you've had.
So the teacher.
Yeah, she went through all of that.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, and for this one, really the request, the reason that we're making the request to update it is because the publisher is no longer supporting the digital version of the text that we have. So if we have any students that need translation or who need, like we had a student who has visual impairment last year and we couldn't get the read aloud text for them. So it's just causing barriers for some of our students to not have the most updated version. But we did look, so Tammy Scott is the teacher of this course. We did look at the curriculum that Mr. Feller uses for ag. We looked at, they have a food science version and she looked at it. It didn't feel like really there was a benefit to switching. There are a lot of things about this. This text is used across the state. So there's a lot of collaboration that she's able to do with other districts. They share lesson plans and plans. It's related for CTE courses. They have a framework they have to train. It's tied to that framework that's already been established and it's used across the state. For her, one thing that is really helpful, her background is not in science, so she really appreciates there's a lot of science background and support in here that helps her make sure that that's pretty strong for students, so she appreciates that. And then the new edition does have some additional accessibility features, so it also saves us from having to get new lab equipment or anything like that, so able to maintain kind of what she's been doing. So it's really just an update.
If we have a student that has like a visual impairment and the curriculum doesn't work, is there an opportunity for you to just like fast track it so we can make sure that student has?
Yeah, so what we ended up having to do was get a read aloud thing, and then there was an additional support that had to happen to have that be accessible for that student. It wasn't as seamless.
Okay.
So that's what's happening right now. Like there's, like if she wants to translate something, it's a much more arduous process to give things than it will be. Any questions about that? So Project Lead the Way, this is currently, so we had a grant for the last 2 years. So Mr. Ferguson got a grant 2 years ago to try Project Lead the Way as a curriculum for elective classes. So if you remember, the middle school switched to having elective classes that were every other day, so semester long, so about 45 minutes, 45 periods of elective by the time they alternate. And he wanted to have some more that were related to STEM and kind of supporting kids with that. A little bit more targeted and support for the teachers for those classes. So we have had that grant for 2 years. I think that came, Todd really reached out and got that set. So it has been, they've had an opportunity over those 2 years to try 4 different lessons, 4 different of the units that Project Lead the Way has.
How'd it go?
They've been pretty happy with them. I think right now we've had, last year there was the STEM teacher taught, Miss Wakefield is currently teaching them, and so she's kind of combining it with some of the ag things that she was there. And they appreciate these. So what we're finding is that, they wanted to move forward and recommend this as something that we adopted and continue with as a support for those classes. So I think it's been really helpful as a support for the like this is green architecture is it's a little bit more actual design and STEM support for that class connected to kind of some of the things that she'll do with agriculture, the greenhouse, and some of the other kind of pieces that she'll do with that. They're aligned so that actually it's been around for a really long time. It's been used and they keep improving it. So the more recent things are even more tied to like the new science standards. They updated the science, social studies standards, family and technology. So it's really aligned with standards. They're pretty engaging topics. So the ones that we've done are, there's a design and engineering one, and I'll show you some examples of some student work that Ms. Wakefield shared with me. There's a airplane one, there's like we're gonna do, there's this building one, and then there's that. So there's a number of different ones that we've been using. The kids are they're pretty engaging topics. They're career focused. So when the kids are in there, they're actually seeing examples of careers as part of their labs. There's at the end of each lesson, there's a story of someone who has a career who's using this, and there's a wide variety of types of career. Some are college, some are industry, kind of all across the board. So there's connections there. Everything in here is digital, it's translated. They're all available in Spanish because they're digital for kids. All those accessibility features are available. And they do connect with the CTE work that they do with the high schools, kind of setting up some of the skills to support them there. So they've been pretty happy with it.
Have we tried different ones?
They have tried, yeah. So the ones that they've tried, I think I put on their proposal are, do you mean, are design and modeling, green architecture, science and technology, flight and space are the ones they've tried.
But not like away from project. Anyway.
Oh, there's another, we use like a Lego spike as a support for like some robotics that's another kind of a STEM. It's not a full curriculum, but that's another STEM type elective. And then before, and other than this, the other electives that have been taught are more designed by the teacher. So she's kind of doing horticulture, forestry, things like that.
What's the one
This has
that's
a
used
lot
by?
of structure.
More structure, yeah. The other thing it does is it has professional development for the teachers that's included as part of it.
When you get to robotics and things like that, wasn't there a different curriculum that MP3 was using?
Vex is the curriculum that they have there,
And
and that's what the high school also has.
so could one say that we could implement that here
In the robotics class,
or as a STEM alternative or?
yeah, it's not, I think that would be, it's fairly expensive to start. Can't remember what Vex we started. So when this first, with the robotics is a different class that they have here.
Okay.
So they've looked at, there's a lot of different elective classes that the middle school tries, because they're kind of like, try a little bit, try a little bit, try a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I bring it up
Yes, yeah,
is their grading, when you look up the reviews, it's like 2.8 out of 5.
mhm. Yeah, and I don't know what that was,
But
like,
there's a lot of pros to this program. I mean, the cons were, some of it's just too easy for some kids and they don't get the growth.
mhm.
I mean, the pros, obviously, yes, there's a lot of support, there's all this stuff, but when you get a kid that's taking an elective for something like this, and that's whoever built that probably needs a little bit more,
Mhm.
like, so that was the biggest con that I
Oh, so
saw.
that, like,
It was,
The
There's-
level of challenge for
Yeah,
kids,
yeah.
One thing I think that is interesting, and I'm not sure what specific reading is, I could look at that, that you were looking at there, but one thing I think that is interesting, and maybe in more of the more recent editions, is that there's actually embedded in the materials a whole set of extension pieces that can be added in for some kids that maybe are like,
Yeah.
definitely have a little bit more, excitement or interest in doing some of these pieces. And because they are electives at the middle school and they're very short, they do, the way that they're structured is they do an elective of 2 electives each semester, and it's every other day. So basically it's a quarter's worth of electives, so they're little taster bites, I think.
I think what would be helpful is to see what you were looking at.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'll send it.
Yeah, and then I can look and see
Yeah.
if there's
And you can
specific
explore.
questions.
Yeah. I'll send it to you.
Hands-on kinds of things should allow you to do extensions and.
And if that's the case, then
Maybe you have to.
I mean, there was tons of pros to this program.
Yeah.
You know, if they're gonna take an elective and then they're gonna get capped
Yeah.
at this, like, maybe it's a waste of our money and time.
Mm.
It does say it's quite extensive.
I think there's a yearly subscription fee, so part of the benefit of this is that part of the expenses are the initial startup of the materials, but because we have that grant. That kind of all got taken care of, so those initial, like the more expensive parts of buying the tools, buying the saws, like that all was covered with the grant funding. So it's a yearly subscription to access it, which is
Yeah.
typical.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep, and all those questions are great. I think this is, some example pictures of kids doing this. So this, the green architecture, this is the most recent. So I was in their class watching them just the other day, finishing things up. This is an example of science of technology. So some of the things the kids are doing here in this one, they're making ice cream, I think in one, and then in the center picture, they are doing oil spill skimmers. So yeah, so they're trying to make designs.
And is this for K-8 or is there? a
This is
certain-
just middle school.
Right, or not
Oh.
K-8, but 6-8 only. So each grade level has the opportunity for these electives.
Yes, the way that they, depending on how they go through, and the electives are choice, so kids have different choices. This is design and modeling, so this is an example of kind of a kid going through the entire process of building a prototype, they learn how to do actual scale drawings, and then build these puzzle pieces that we share. Those are some examples that she had shared, since she couldn't be here. So I think if there are specific questions, and also I think that
all I know.
Ms. Wakefield would probably also be able to tell if there's specific things.
Yeah. And I have to also remember it's 6th to 8th grade.
Yes, and I think,
Yeah.
I know, so when it says it's broad, maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So questions about those?
You're on again?
Think I'm on
Oh,
again.
Busy tonight.
I know.
We haven't had Adrian in a while. It's good. Put her on the hot
It's
seat.
getting all out at once.
I know, right? Do you want me to go ahead and go into
Yeah.
the panorama one?
Yeah,
Gosh, great,
please.
okay. So this is panorama. So currently what we have is 3 different and separate tools that we have, that we use to do all of the things that we're. So we, basically what this helps us to do is it's a data aggregating platform. So it lets, there's a dashboard we can pull up, and the principals and the teachers and can see, here's a student, here's all of their, so I'm not having to go over here to the iReady and over here to the attendance and over here to the, it's all in one place. So it's a kind of a dashboard aggregator. And we currently have a system that we use that for, but what we found over the past few years, especially as we're really trying to do more of that, is that the tool we're using is pretty clunky. It's pretty difficult to actually get in and see that data in a way that's really easily accessible and fluid. So this is a shift to have something that's a little more user friendly. That's going to allow us to do some more of that monitoring. The other thing that's nice about this is right now we have to track interventions. So like we've talked about the tier 1 and tier 2, and when we are assigning kids to intervention groups, the platform that we're using to track interventions is sort of a standalone, and you can put the information in there, but it doesn't connect to the other things. And what this will do is it'll say, allow us to take all of that data and connect that to the student's intervention. So we can say, hey, here's the student's data, here's the intervention that they're having. What's that doing to their data? We can see as their attendance going up, was their grade. So it kind of links everything together instead of it being 2 separate places for things. And the other piece that it's replacing is, the DESA survey that we do for social emotional screening and tracking. So the benefits to this that our counselors were really excited about is that DESA survey is, except high school kids do their own data. That at the lower grades teachers are entering kind of how kids are doing with those different learning things, and with this it's student surveys all the way down to I think 3rd grade. So it's actually student based, and the counselors felt like that was going to give better information. And then there's also more check-ins and other things that we can do more often, little small check-ins with kids that are part of this, and that also all gets connected to their overall picture. So it's just it's a more useful tool, and it's pretty much a wash. There's a pretty small difference, less than $1,000 difference in cost. A lot. But no, this is over a 3-year. So it's not over, this is a 3-year.
So if
That's
we
what I think, so.
agree to that,
Yeah.
3-year contract at this amount, or this covers 3 years?
This is the amount for the 3 years, so it's paid.
But I think the important thing is like, we're paying for these 3 tools right now.
Yes.
And we're paying around $80,000. This just replaces that. Okay, because I was like,
I
we're
was-
spending
I was
$80,000
freaking
out.
out.
Yeah.
And I talked to Steve an hour ago,
And
and I'm
it's
like,
not so it's
not an
whatever that is divided by 3, that's how much per year.
Right, but we're
Yeah.
already,
We're already
investing
paying, I think
about
it's
that
a
much.
$600 difference.
So
So
what
outside
are
of
we
that-
getting, sorry, so what are we getting rid of?
Where we would be switching out homeroom for the data dashboards and DESA for the social issues.
Okay.
so 2 other platforms.
Yes, so homeroom, we pay for homeroom to do the data aggregating piece and then
If
for
we
the
all
interventions.
fully understand and support this is,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
knowing it's a $600 difference, you're not gonna get too much of a
Yeah.
fight.
But I do have a
But no,
question.
absolutely, yeah. Mhm.
I mean, outside of the financial.
Yeah.
You know, because software implementation is never challenging and there's never
No,
hiccups.
no. Yeah, it's
So.
always perfect after, I think.
So how do you
I'll tell
feel?
all.
Yeah, I'm like, that's why I'm like, Joe's here, like, what does this
Mhm.
actually look like? Like, will we lose data? How long will it take to actually get this up and running? Because we're pretty data focused right now with our students and their progress. Where are we gonna come up against roadblocks or any losses when we do that switch to a new platform? It happens all the
So
time.
part of the piece of this is the data doesn't actually live in homeroom. Homeroom takes the data from other places and makes it into a nice picture for one part. So like for the data aggregating part, so that data doesn't go away, it's just put into a different thing. For the interventions right now, that data is all captured in that platform. It's pretty static. You have to look up each kid. So we will probably we'll need to pull that out, but it's really pretty much like a report. It's not a interactive kind of thing. And then same for DESA, we'll pull data out of that.
So is there a plan to implement it in a small portion of the students to see how the implementation is successful before you launch it and move all the data at one time for the whole district?
That doesn't really work that way.
Okay.
Yeah, either. Then we have to pay for both systems.
Okay.
What I can share is that I went to Panorama, a different district about 10 years ago. It's been around a long time. They've refined it. Can't tell you what those steps are, but they've done this a while. And so I don't know if you've had any dialogue or know what the process is yet, but you're talking databases in our student information systems.
And what Adrian said is accurate. Data lives elsewhere. It just goes into homeroom. The advantage. So there'll be some work this summer to get all those APIs connecting our student data to do those automated uploads. There's always going to be 1 or 2 with homeroom or this that we'll have to do manually. But I'm not super, like the data structure of this one is great. I think the big advantage too is, we've had homeroom for what, 15 years? And it's never really hit a flashpoint for us. It's difficult to get reports that we want and we see the data we want to see. We're so investing so much extra time on getting those, whereas what we've seen out of Panorama, the reports are just there or they're really user-friendly and creating them, so.
Yeah, right now, I think all of our principals are spending extra time downloading things, making their own spreadsheet to get, so it's just, I think this will help.
So this will be something that happens over the summer.
Mhm.
And the connecting of those APIs, is that being done by your staff or is that included as a service within this quote?
Yeah, and I say APIs, I'm using that very liberal. We just get them configured and they do automated pulls out of Skype. So we don't have to get, once we set up that connection, then we're done.
And you'll see they did actually waive our setup fee as part of this. Yeah, so. As part of the,
Negotiation.
let's get it to, so yeah, so it's.
Some negotiating opportunities
All
there.
right.
I
Yeah,
see
and I
that,
will
that's
say, like,
exciting.
the counselors all were, like, as soon as I said that, yes, when we were watching the presentation, the principals were texting me.
So now we're gonna be
So-
looking for more, honed in data.
And I think that, I mean, that really is the benefit of it, is that we can do that instead of having, let's go over here and get the reading specialist spreadsheet and the ML specialist spreadsheet. It's like, we can pull up student and see dashboard, so that's,
And at the, not just the principals, but you were referring to teachers having access to this and being able to pull it by student, see what the needs are.
yeah, and they currently do that with homeroom, but it's just, it's fairly, yeah, it's it's not as user friendly as we like it to be. Questions? And if you think of questions later.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's fine.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Moving on to some old business. It was the second review and approval of the 2025-26 Latinos in Action MOU. Do you have any questions?
One question. Will students self-report to participate in this? Or will teachers refer or suggest students participate?
So they have in their paperwork, they have recommendations on how to recruit and to make students aware. And so Kayla Burnson will be that teacher. She's already engaged in a soft recruitment.
Okay.
So our counselors and our staff are waiting for your approval to be able to move students in, because they've got to build those schedules.
Okay. Well. Let's get a motion to approve the second review, the 2025-26 Latinos in Action MOU.
We'll make a motion to approve the 2025-26 Latinos in Action MOU.
Second. Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
I
Okay. Well, we don't have any students.
She's gonna be, she's checked in, said she's gonna be late. And we said, well, we will put it towards the end of tonight. We're at the end of tonight. So let me do my presentation if we can, and we'll see if she.
that's good.
Eden and Logan.
It's
Yeah,
just
just
Logan,
Logan.
yeah. Eden having athletic commitment.
Volleyball started today.
Kennedy had to work. I don't have a lot, actually. Graduation, we were there. And to that point, I want to say thank you. It's really great for our community to have all of our board members there. There have been times when we haven't had all board members there. It's really good. Next year, I want to make sure we get the picture of everybody. It's just a nice setting to get you on the stage and photo. So, thank you for being there. It was a nice evening. Really good sentiments from both the students and the staff.
Sure.
Are you?
I think we got that generation singing Sinatra.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah, what a performance.
It was
Awesome.
That was amazing.
It was probably one of the best graduations I've been to.
Yeah, I love the energy.
The Bach band was cool last year. I mean, these guys did amazing.
They
That
did a
was
great
really
job.
cool.
So my nephew goes to Linden, and so they went to their graduation the next night. And the performer also sang the same song.
Really? Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Sinatra back.
So he is back. Classic never gonna stop.
We went to visit Sandy Rogers and Kathy Abelman and give them plaques and some mementos and thank them for their service. I mean, one of the things I always tell them when you're talking 30, 35, or 40 years, plaque and stop and to say thank you isn't enough, isn't the impact that they've had. So just really good to share gratitude and recognize the commitment that they've got towards our kids and our families.
And I see that these are full-time staff in a certain role. But could we extend this to paraeducators who have also put in that level of years in the future?
Sure, if they're retiring, typically the triggers are they're retiring or
Yeah,
are they resigning. So,
I know we had. There might have been some hurt feelings last year when we had some people that have been here for many, many, many years. That retired and there wasn't any recognition at all.
you can send us a message so I know what that means.
Yeah, well,
We will, so we can catch that.
okay.
For your calendars, the WASDA conference is in Seattle this year. It's not Bellevue and it's not Spokane. It's in Seattle because it's gotten big enough that they can't put it in Bellevue. There is a pre-conference, so we will bring students and if you have an interest in the pre-conference, the three options are the board boot camp, a law conference, and then bridging the gap, building real connections between students and school boards. So we would like to have confirmation of your interest so that registration's open. We do not want to be in a situation where we don't have people registered. So we'd love for you to look at this by the 17th if we get back to Angie. So, and then others, you can check your calendars, but
It is the 20th, is the Thursday, that's the.
that's the 20th.
That's, okay, then okay.
I cannot do the 20th.
Okay, can you come in for the Friday and Saturday? Or come down the night of the 20th?
I can definitely check.
And then what was also talked about before was an effort to try and do board of distinction. And if that's still an interest, then it would be great to be there. And I'm not talking about the pre-conference stuff, but the other 2 days.
That was on the last night, or was that at dinner?
That was
On
at
the
I think it was
Thursday
It was
night
a dinner.
or Friday night.
Friday night, right?
dinner, right?
Yeah.
Friday.
I can be there Friday, I can't be there Thursday, but I can be there Friday.
Was it Friday night? Because
It was at the big dinner.
so we do our dinner on Thursday night, right?
Yes.
Check out.
What was the?
I'll-
They did before.
I will look at the past games. I will.
Like all the awards were at that one dinner.
That dinner. But they did announce the winners. I think they announced like all the nominees at the Friday dinner and all the winners at Friday morning.
I think it was during lunch. I think that we have a board dinner on Friday. but
No.
I'll go back and look at.
I felt like everybody got their awards when we were in the big room.
We were, but I didn't,
Yeah.
I think that was the first one.
Oh, was that it?
It was at lunch and then we took pictures in the evening. After.
No.
Anyway, it's coming up. November.
It's fine. Get to the summer that fast.
And then last day of school is tomorrow. It's a half day. Then we have a board meeting here on the 25th. And just to give you a heads up, we will have our full budget hearing that Daniel will have ready and we will present and then we will ask for approval because it must be approved by. She'll have the documentation. We've gone through 5 iterations now. Yep. And I'm feeling really good about where we're landing and what we anticipated. So that's coming. And then, man, most of our administrative team is gonna go to Spokane, AWSP Wausau Conference, including Rob Zabel, our new AP at the high school. Then we have some of our principals, including Rob Zabel, going to the PLC conference as well. A number of our principals are presenting. on, the hiring practice that has been going through from elementary up into the high school. We're actually doing screening of candidates and demonstration lessons and so excited to go and share some of the innovation that our administrators are doing here. And I'm participating in the legislative conference in July, and then we have our retreat also in July, and I think that is all I have.
Will there be a time when the new assistant principal introduces himself to the board?
It doesn't start till July 1.
Okay.
Yeah, we will. Probably August, I'm thinking. Because we get pretty, we won't have a large one for our retreat, and then we'll have one in August, right? Go back into the dates, but, we get scarce during the summer because we're busy, so. But yes, we'll make sure we get it. Okay. And so, do you happen to reach out to Logan?
Not today.
If you can send her a text, and just let her know we're wrapping up and have her come by tomorrow.
Yeah.
We've got flowers for them, cards for them on behalf, everything is on behalf, thank you and gratitude on behalf of the board. I've written a note of things. Sure. Well,
I wish we could have seen Kennedy one more time.
she may still come by, I mean,
May.
I think she shared the email.
Okay.
Well, we can adjourn this official meeting and sign some documents. Thank you, Jim.